Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and in today's video let's have a look at how to operate the doors of the Airbus A320 family realistically in Microsoft Flight Simulator with the Phoenix A321. A small word of caution at this point: if you are a real-world Airbus door operator, then please do refer to your training manuals rather than a random flight simulation gaming video. That's really for the sake of your own safety and the safety of anybody involved with you in aviation. Now, a small word of caution: the doors in my company's A320 are a little bit different from the ones that Phoenix have modeled. However, the same principles do still apply, so some minor variations there. Alright, and now let's get straight into it. There are basically four scenarios for operating a door. You can either open or close them from the outside, or you can open or close them from the inside. We're going to start chronologically in the order of the flight here, so we're going to start with operating them from the outside. As a general rule of caution, you are really only allowed to operate those doors under 5 safety precautions. And those are, in principle, you can only operate a door when you have reached the parking position and the engines are off. The door mode has been changed to park. Only after jetways or passenger stairs or catering vehicles have been positioned. Only with the approval of a knock or thumbs up of one of the ground staff, and when the fasten seatbelt sign has been switched off. Otherwise, you're not allowed to operate the door, obviously with the exception of an evacuation. But that would be a different topic. So let's go ahead and start with the basic over here. That's opening the door from the outside. And that's probably the easiest point because there is the least that you have to take care of. So we're going to go upstairs over here and we are going to have a look. So before you open the door, there is one general thing that you always want to do. That's look through that little window, just to see what's inside. For example, there may be a red strap attached on some operators. That means don't operate. Now, when we go inside, we are going to start by operating the flap and opening the lever. And that's going to open up that door. Now, while you do that, have a good look at the cabin pressure light in here, making sure that it's not going to illuminate. When the lever is up, we can swing the door open. Make sure you move it all the way to the side. If you don't move it all the way, you can see it can still move until you hear that click. And that means that the gust lock has now engaged, and thereafter close that handle again. That is most important, and I'm sure many flight simmers are going to forget that. Guys, this is drag, and this is a lot of drag. Alright, and that's our open door. Now, the next logical step is to close it from the inside, because, well, now we're aboard, we have boarded our passengers, so let's get ready to move. Now, first things first, whenever you're operating a door, hold on tightly. That means you got a grip over there, and you got a grip over there. Use them. For closing the door, we are obviously going to use the one on the left-hand side here. The first step in closing the door is actually to release the gust block. The gust block is that little button down here. What it does is to lock the door in place so that it cannot be moved by any strong winds, as the name gust block basically implies. So we are going to press that gust block to release the door. Now it can move. Hold on tightly to the left-hand side over here, then grab the handle. Do not move it with the actual handle over here. Move it with that handle, and then we can close it up until it's in the fully closed position, and then we are going to move the door handle all the way down like this. And then when the door handle is all the way down, we are going to cross-check the door locking indication over here. And this is something that Phoenix have not modeled in the version that I'm using to record this at the moment. You actually need to be able to see some green stripes over here. If you don't see the green stripes, then the door is not locked. You got to report this to the purser, who will report it on to the captain, and that's it. Also, note that it is not common practice to arm the door immediately when it's closed, so leave it in the disarmed position. The pilots are able to see this, by the way, so if we walk up here to the front, on the eCam on the door page, you can see our one left door is now showing closed but not armed. if you accidentally were to arm the slide like this, the pilot would know, and it probably wouldn't take long until you get a call asking you to disarm that slide again. So that much for closing the door. Now, things are getting a lot more interesting when opening the door, because now we came usually out of an in-flight situation and all of a sudden we have to open that door, which means there are quite a couple of threats associated with it. So the first thing that you gotta check is that the door is not armed anymore. So the first thing, check the lever, make sure it's in the disarm position. There is a caution built into the door though. If the lever is in the armed position and you move the door handle more than 3 degrees, then this light over here, which is the slide arm light, is going to illuminate. And that would be basically your last caution before you accidentally fire the slide. Now, if you moved the lever more than 3 degrees with the door in the with the slide being armed, the door is going to open automatically. Do not try to prevent this. There is a lot of pressure on these doors and they will open, regardless whatever you try. The only thing that is going to happen when the door fires open automatically with the slide armed is that you are going to be dragged outside and you'll be hanging right in the path of the slide that's going to deploy, which is not very healthy. So try to avoid that situation as good as you can. Now let's go into opening the door. In order to be allowed to open the door, as mentioned earlier, you got to verify that the engines are off. You got to verify that there is someone outside. So peek outside, ensure that there are stairs connected. For instance, we can see the stairs down here. Then, and this part you cannot simulate in flight simulation, someone has to actually knock on the door from the ground services. Okay, we'll assume that that's happened. And then check the seatbelt signs, which are located up here in the galley, and make sure that they've been turned off. Only when they are turned off, you're allowed to open the door. Now, first thing first, check the slide. And as we can see, the slide is still armed, so make sure you disarm it. And then hold on tight on the handle over here. And now just move the lever up slightly, about 3 degrees. When you do that, and there is no light illuminated down here from the slide, and the cabin pressure light is also not illuminated. This one would indicate that the airplane is still pressurized. By the way, it's disabled when the engines are running, so be a little careful with that. That's one of the reasons why we're not allowed to open the doors with the engines running. So pay careful attention to those two lights, and only when verified that the slide not armed light is not illuminating, then you can move the door handle all the way up, and now you can move the door all the way out. Now be very careful that you actually move it all the way into the gust block and hear that click. Only after you heard the click, you know that the door is locked. Personally, I always try to move it a little bit left and right afterwards, just to be sure that the lock actually has properly engaged. Alright, and that's the opening of the door from the inside. Now let's go ahead, everyone's deplaned, we are ready to shut it down, so now we are going to close the door from the outside. And this is probably one of the easier steps, so what we do is to release the gust block, get out the handle, and then we can just swing the door shut. Be sure we shut it completely though, otherwise it may not be watertight. Here we go, and finally don't forget to store that handle. Alright, and that's it. That's how to operate the doors on the Airbus A320 family by Phoenix. I do hope you enjoyed this little bit more thorough tutorial. Certainly operating those doors is not the standard stuff that pilots have to do, but that's exactly the problem there, because when you have to, let's say the cabin crew are currently busy and ask you to help, you don't want to be that idiot who's earning a big chunk of money standing there saying, oh, I don't know how to do that. And last but not least, obviously flight simulators are always asking for features like these, but now be sure to learn how to use them properly. Alright, that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this one interesting. Be sure to leave your feedback in the comments underneath the video. As always, like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, be sure to have a look at my Buy Me a Coffee link, and perhaps consider a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.